Like every other day, I sat at my familiar wooden table beneath the ancient oak tree. My deck of tarot cards lay before me, waiting for the next seeker of fate. People came and went, some hopeful, others desperate. They asked about love, wealth, or guidance. And I, Bianca, the village's most trusted fortune teller, gave them glimpses of the future. My accurate prophecies had earned me fame, but that meant little to me. What truly brought me happiness was my quiet life with my husband. Suddenly, an old woman in a black cloak appeared. I waited for her to ask for a reading, but she remained silent. Instead, she drew the death card and placed it on the table. I had seen it many times before. It could mean change, endings, or even rebirth, but this time, it meant only one thing: death. I looked up, but she was gone. Only the card remained. A chill crept through me. I grabbed my things and left. When I finally reached home, I shuffled my deck with trembling hands and drew 3 cards. The Empress, the Hanged Man, Death. I stared at them, cold fear settling into my bones. The wheel of fate had already begun to turn. The next day, a royal messenger knocked on my door.
The Duchess has summoned you.
My hands tightened around the parchment. I had already seen this moment unfold in my reading, but I had no choice. The Duchess sat before me, her hands clasped tightly as she fought to maintain her composure. She gripped my hands.
My husband vanished during a hunt days ago. Tell me where he is.
I calmed the Duchess, then focused on shuffling the cards. The cards never lie. I drew a card, the Devil. A suffocating silence filled the room. I see darkness, fangs, blood. He may have met a terrible end. The Duchess's expression twisted with fury.
You dare say my husband is dead? Are you cursing him with your filthy magic?
No, my lady. The cards only speak the truth.
Get out!
I lowered my head and left without another word. Hours later, news reached the castle. The Duke had been found, his body torn apart, mauled beyond recognition, by a bear. The Duchess screamed, and then she sent her soldiers for me. My husband and I fled into the night. Shadows twisted around the trees, the branches clawing at me like skeletal fingers. The pounding of hooves and the glint of torches chased us into the forest. We can't outrun them, I gasped, clutching my husband's arm. He turned to me, his eyes shadowed with quiet determination.
You need to run, Bianca. I'll distract the soldiers.
When his warm hand touched my face, it jolted me awake. I cried, shaking violently. No, I'm not leaving without you. The soldiers were nearly upon us. With one last smile, he shoved me ahead, drew his dagger and lunged toward them. I fled in panic, my heart pounding wildly. Behind me, the sounds of clashing steel and desperate screams echoed through the air. When silence finally fell, I turned back, clinging to the frail hope that my husband still lived. But what I saw froze me in place. His corpse swayed gently from a tree branch carried by the wind. A choked sob escaped my throat. The Hanged Man. Everything was unfolding exactly as the cards had foretold. Fate was drawing near to the death card. I couldn't cry. Tears wouldn't change destiny. But I would have my revenge. The Duchess would pay with her life. I was ready to pay any price, even death. I began the ritual and gave myself to the darkness because pain had taken everything from me. The symbols I once feared were now etched into my mind, and I was ready to offer my soul to make their power mine. The cards appeared before me one last time. Ace of Cups, 3 of Swords, the Star. That night, in her grand dining hall, the Duchess raised a glass of wine to her lips. Ace of Cups. The poison worked swiftly, burning through her veins. She choked, gasping for air as her body shook uncontrollably. In her panic, she grabbed the tablecloth and dragged the whole table down with her. As she fell, 3 knives from the table stabbed deep into her back, just like the 3 of swords predicted. Her breath came in shallow, painful gasps. Then a candle fell from its holder corresponding to the star card. The fire raged fiercely, consuming everything in its path. Her screams were lost in the inferno. I fell to my knees as dark smoke wrapped around me. It sank deep into my body, tying me to something beyond this world. When I opened my eyes, I saw someone's hand reaching out to me. The tarot cards were placed beside me. It turned out my soul was trapped within the card. Death. The wheel of fate has stopped. No one can escape their own destiny.
Lucid dreaming had always fascinated me. The idea of controlling my dreams, bending reality to my will, was exhilarating. I spent hours reading guides, watching videos, and joining forums to learn the craft. One recurring warning, however, intrigued me the most. Never look into a mirror while lucid dreaming. It was a rule repeated in countless posts. People claimed mirrors in dreams were portals to places your mind couldn't comprehend. But rules were meant to be broken, weren't they? That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered to myself, "This is a dream. I am in control." When I opened my eyes, I stood in a crumbling mansion. The air was heavy, tinged with damp rot. The walls groaned as if alive. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I had a mission. I wandered through the dim corridors until I found it. An ornate mirror framed in black and silver, taller than me, standing against the far wall. My reflection was hazy, shifting like water. I hesitated, but curiosity pushed me forward. As I peered closer, the surface of the mirror rippled. My reflection vanished, replaced by something else. A scene unfolded before me, fiery chaos. Rivers of molten lava flowed through a barren landscape. Faceless figures writhed in agony, their silent screams haunting. The heat felt real, blistering my skin. Suddenly, the mirror pulled at me, its surface like a vortex. My feet slid forward. Panic surged, and I yanked myself back, knocking the mirror over. It shattered into countless shards, each reflecting fragments of the hellish scene. When I turned around, she was there. Her skin was pallid, almost translucent, veins spidering beneath. Her eyes were empty voids pulling at my very soul.
Leave!
She hissed, her voice echoing in the empty house.
Leave now, or regret it forever!
Before I could react, the dream collapsed into darkness. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding. The room was familiar, comforting, but the dream's intensity lingered. It was just a dream, I muttered, trying to convince myself. My phone buzzed. A last-minute work trip. I had to leave immediately. The journey was uneventful until the taxi pulled up at my lodging for the night. A small, secluded inn. My stomach twisted as I stepped out. The inn was the house from my dream. Every detail matched. The cracked paint, the warped wooden door, even the oppressive air. An older woman greeted me with a kind smile.
Welcome, dear. Let me take your bags. You must be tired.
Her face was eerily familiar. The same hollow eyes, the same pale complexion. "Thank you," I mumbled, my voice shaking. Inside, the house was even worse. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally and the silence was deafening. The woman led me to the living room and gestured toward the sofa.
Rest well,
she said, her smile lingering a moment too long. That's when I saw it. The mirror. It stood in the corner, identical to the one from my dream. My knees went weak. I turned to her, my voice trembling. "Where did you get that mirror?" She tilted her head, her smile never wavering.
Oh, it's always been here.
She left, and I stared at the mirror, paralyzed. It was just a coincidence, I told myself, though deep down, I knew better. Minutes later, she returned with a tray.
Tea?
She offered. I took the cup, my hands shaking. She watched me, waiting. Something about her gaze felt wrong, predatory. Her smile stretched a little too wide, her eyes lingering on me too long. My fingers trembled as I held the cup, every instinct screaming at me not to drink. With a sharp motion, I flung the tea at her. The cup shattered and she recoiled, her face twisting with something unhumanly sinister. Without waiting to see what would happen next, I bolted. Outside, I flagged down a passing taxi, my hands shaking as I climbed in. As the car sped away, relief began to replace my fear. I had escaped, or so I thought. The road was empty, shrouded in a thick fog that seemed to swallow everything beyond a few meters. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the middle of the road. The driver swerved to avoid her, but the car skidded and crashed into a tree. My head slammed against the window, and the world blurred. When I came to, the driver was gone. I was alone in the wreck, surrounded by suffocating silence. Then she appeared, the pale woman, standing just beyond the shattered windshield.
Death is inevitable.
She whispered, her voice echoing in the stillness. I scrambled out of the car, running blindly through the fog until I stumbled upon a small, unlit house. The door was unlocked, and I threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. The house was eerily quiet, each room draped in shadows. As I opened a door at the end of the hallway, I froze. There I was, lying on a bed, my chest rising and falling as though in sleep. Is this still a dream? Or am I? Before I could finish, the pale woman materialized behind me.
You've already crossed the line. There's no going back.
I turned to her, my mind racing. If this was a dream, I could wake myself up. I lunged toward my sleeping form, desperate to return to my body. But she was faster. Her icy grip closed around my wrist, dragging me backward.
No one escapes their fate.
She hissed. I struggled, kicking and screaming, but her strength was inhuman. Her stomach stretched impossibly wide, revealing an abyss of darkness. With one final pull, she swallowed me whole.
Finally done. Now this old house is ready to welcome its new owner. Hopefully the new tenant won't get too attached to it. I'm Susan, a real estate agent, but all the houses I deal with are old properties rumoured to be haunted. Why? Because we're not after rental commissions. What we really want is the deposit money from unlucky tenants. Tenants who can't handle the ghosts I personally create to scare them away. I'm absolutely confident about this scam. This old house has stood for over 70 years and is decorated in a Gothic style. Despite surviving a fire, the house remains mostly intact. This time, the tenant has paid a hefty amount to rent the entire mansion. So I've meticulously prepared everything to welcome my special guest, and I'm hoping he'll flee from this mansion soon enough. My client this time was a man named Paul. He was pretty young, but his way of dressing was, well, a bit odd. He carefully inspected the house, and while he was at it, I quietly observed him too. His suitcase was compact, but he also carried a bag filled with random stuff. Looking closer, I noticed a few exorcism tools inside, silver daggers, holy water, and a crucifix. Looks like I've run into another religious fanatic, I thought to myself. Paul suddenly asked,
Are you Christian too? That rosary you're wearing looks quite special.
I was caught off guard but quickly brushed it off. Yeah, my family's Christian. My aunt's even a nun. I glanced at the rosary and explained, It's a gift from her, but honestly, I just wear it as an accessory. Paul agreed to sign the rental contract on the spot. I smirked inwardly.
Looks like this deal is going to be a smooth one.
Before Paul moved in, I secretly installed hidden cameras around the house to monitor his every move and plan my scare tactics. Watching Paul sleep soundly, I smiled with excitement and began my first night of work. A terrifying scream startled Paul awake, making him look anxiously towards the window. At that moment, I vaguely saw his eyes light up. The window had handprints made of glowing water, a bit of red light, and a horrifying scream from the Bluetooth speaker, creating a spooky scene. I eagerly waited for Paul's reaction, but he seemed unfazed and went back to sleep. Looks like I underestimated him, but no worries, the fun is just beginning. The next day, I printed a picture of a human head, put it in a jar, and placed it in the fridge. I sat in front of my computer anxiously waiting for Paul's reaction, but Paul didn't seem scared at all. He looked straight into the camera and bluntly exposed my prank. I also tied a fake ghost made of white cloth to a string, making it fly in the hallway. Watching Paul's reaction, I couldn't help but suspect he was expecting something truly scary to appear. But whatever the reason, one thing is certain. He has no intention of leaving anytime soon. And I won't give up that easily either. This time, I decided to scare Paul myself. I snuck into the house with a spare key, carrying a large human skeleton model. But as soon as I entered, I saw a charred skeleton rushing towards me. Instinctively, I tried to use the remote to stop it, but it was clearly not one of my controllable props. I had encountered a real ghost. My whole body froze, and I tried my best to scream for help. In my desperation, Paul appeared and splashed holy water on the skeleton, making it scream in agony. I stared in shock at Paul and the skeleton, letting Paul drag me away. Paul calmly drew a strange circle and said,
I am an exorcist. This house once belonged to an English landlord who killed many slaves and fed their hearts to his daughter, believing it would cure her heart disease. I will perform a ritual to help their souls find peace.
I scoffed. You're joking, right? This is just another one of your pranks. Paul didn't argue and splashed holy water in my eyes. Suddenly, my vision cleared. Around me, dozens of ghosts appeared, their faces twisted, eyes burning with hatred. They were all staring at me. I felt like my 27-year-old worldview suddenly collapsed. I wanted Paul to say something to me, but he was focused on his exorcism. The ghost of the landlord seemed to sense the danger. He used the mirror to command the slave ghosts to break Paul's protective circle. I was confused about how to help Paul. Suddenly, the wound on my hand heated up. My arm was being controlled. I remembered the wound was caused by that ancient mirror. The landlord must be using it to control me and harm Paul. Just as my fingers were about to pierce Paul's artery, Paul suddenly opened his eyes, stopped my hand, and grabbed my rosary. With just the rosary beads, Paul easily destroyed all the screaming ghosts around us. As I was about to run to hug Paul, a chilling sensation enveloped me. A strange voice echoed in my head.
Finally, that pesky rosary is gone. Now this body will be mine.
I looked in horror at my transparent body. It turned out they had been targeting my body all along, but I was always protected by the rosary. The landlord sacrificed his soul to trick Paul into breaking my rosary so his daughter could possess my body. I tried to scream for Paul's help, but it seemed no one could hear me. Is this the price I have to pay for exploiting ghosts for my own gain?
Just leave it at the door. I want to sanitize this entire house. Hurry up.
This mattress still looks brand new. I really hit the jackpot today. Tonight, I'll finally sleep on a warm, comfy bed. This is my home. It's everything I have. As someone uneducated with no place to rely on, I've struggled to survive alone in this suffocating city. I had to learn to save as much as possible, just to build up a little bit of capital so I wouldn't end up wandering the streets. After a long, exhausting day of work, I quickly finished my simple dinner and happily fell asleep on my new mattress. That night, I heard a rustling sound beneath the mattress, but thought it was just the fabric rubbing together. I felt like something was crawling on me, but I convinced myself it was just because I wasn't used to the bed yet. The next morning, I woke up with my body covered in red welts, itching so badly it drove me crazy. That's when I realized there might really be something wrong with the mattress I brought home. I quickly flipped it over. What I saw made my skin crawl. Underneath the mattress were hundreds of bedbugs, wriggling and crawling all over. Terrified, I let go of the mattress immediately. I looked up the cost of bedbug treatments online, but the prices were outrageous. $900 for one cleaning session? Are you kidding me? That's half a month's salary for me. I searched online for ways to get rid of bedbugs. I decided to start with the cheapest method, using baking soda. After finishing, I went out to work, hoping that tonight I'd finally be able to sleep peacefully. That evening, I returned home with a vacuum cleaner I had borrowed from a co-worker. I used it to vacuum up the dead bedbugs and the baking soda from the mattress. After fiddling around for a while, I finally felt like I could get a good night's sleep, but the itching didn't stop. I could feel something biting me, sucking my blood. It was the bedbugs. They were far more stubborn than I had imagined. I grabbed an iron and started pressing the mattress back and forth. The bugs, with their blood-filled bellies, popped with a crisp, crackling sound under the searing heat. Once there wasn't a single bedbug left in sight, I felt reassured enough to go to sleep again. But my peaceful sleep continued to be disrupted. I heard a rustling sound coming from inside my ear. Annoyed, I reached in to clean it out, and I pulled out an entire family of bedbugs. This was beyond what I could tolerate. Terrified, I jumped out of bed, and what I saw froze me in place. There were bedbugs everywhere, on the bed, on the walls, on the sofa, in the kitchen. My home had been completely overrun by bedbugs. Panicked, I ran out of the house. The next morning, I bought a cheap bottle of insect spray. It wasn't specifically for bedbugs, but they're insects too, right? No. Judging by the state of my home, these bedbugs weren't ordinary anymore. They were a bloodthirsty swarm. Furious, I charged into battle against them, determined to reclaim my home. After being sprayed, the bugs seemed to go berserk and started attacking me. Panicking, I sprayed the insecticide on myself. The blisters on my hands flared up, red and painful, like needles piercing my skin. The bottle quickly ran out, but there were still far too many bugs. They climbed over the bodies of their fallen comrades, swarming toward me. A chill ran down my spine and goosebumps prickled my skin. Acting on instinct, I grabbed a lighter and waved it toward the swarm. The bugs, also reacting on instinct, scattered in fear of the fire. Triumphant, I thought to myself, if only I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have wasted money on insecticide. I could have just used fire to drive them out of my house. But my victory was short-lived. A horrible accident happened. The fire from the lighter accidentally caught the insect spray bottle. As I panicked, trying to put out the flames, a searing pain erupted from the blisters on my hands. Horrified, I looked down at my hands. From the blisters, bedbug larvae wriggled out, crawling all over my skin. Terrified, I tried to shake them off, forgetting I was holding the lighter. The fire caught on my clothes and the insecticide I had sprayed on myself, turning me into a living torch.
Recently, a rare fire incident caused by using fire to exterminate bedbugs occurred in a small alley on Triple X Street. The fire left the homeowner severely injured and completely destroyed the house. Even more concerning is that a massive population of bedbugs from the house has dispersed throughout the alley and appears to be increasing rapidly. I am not rich, never have been, and probably never will be, but I know how to survive. That night, I went to the birthday party of some university rich kid whose name I can't even remember, wearing borrowed and patched up clothes. And cheap things don't last long. My shoe heel broke. I fell to the floor amidst the mocking laughter of the jerks around me. Some girl pointed at me and shrieked, as if I were the cheapest joke of the day. I stood up abruptly, threw away the broken shoe, and ran out of the party, barefoot, feeling humiliated and angry. The streets were cold and dirty, the sharp stones cutting into my bare feet, making them bleed. I ran with my head down, tears in my eyes, and bumped into a strange man. "Hey, are you blind?" I cursed at him without holding back, but he just glanced at me, his eyes so cold and sharp that I instinctively shut my mouth. The strange man walked away, unaware that the red shoe in his plastic bag had fallen out. I looked at the shoe as if I had seen my good fortune. My heart was pounding. I didn't care how he got it. All I knew was, I wanted that shoe. I picked it up, put it on. It fit perfectly. It felt like I became a different person. I simply thought it was a good item and took it home. I had a peaceful night, sleeping in my bed like a fancy lady with red shoes on, until the ringtone ruined my sweet dream. "Hello, this is Karen." What? Isabel was murdered. Isabel was a rich girl from my university class. She was supposed to come to the party last night, but she was kidnapped and cut into pieces. Her body was found chopped up by the side of the road. I had to attend her funeral. Well, it was also a good chance to get close to the upper class, right? The funeral was crowded, heavy with sadness. I stood quietly next to Isabel's parents, pretending to be a sweet friend who was heartbroken over her death. Suddenly, my feet started to feel hot, like some invisible force was pulling me forward. In the blink of an eye, I stumbled toward a man in the weirdest way. My dress flew up, showing off the bright red shoes. I could hear people whispering about my shoes, saying I was disrespectful. Embarrassed, I tried to stop my legs and stand straight. I pulled my dress down to cover the shoes, but they kept glowing red, still trying to move my feet. Was there really something wrong with them? After the funeral, I walked home alone. The shoes were quiet again, just like normal shoes. Then suddenly, the heat came back. The shoes woke up again. It felt like the shoes were getting stronger. They spun me around so hard I had to grab a street sign just to stay upright. I stomped my feet down as hard as I could, trying to stop them. I didn't care what they were. Whatever it was, they really pissed me off. I got home safely and entered the passcode to open the door. But those cursed shoes tried to control me again. I held onto the doorknob to keep my balance, trying to stay calm. But then I saw the reflection in the glass and realized the shoes were doing this for a reason. That strange man I bumped into last night. He was watching me. Now I could clearly see his face. It was Joe, the same guy I just saw at the funeral. A wave of fear rushed through me. I rushed inside and slammed the door shut. I dropped onto the chair and lifted my leg to take off the shoes, but they wouldn't come off. The harder I pulled, the tighter they got. Blood started leaking from my ankles. I screamed and grabbed my phone, trying to search for a way to remove the shoes. But just as I opened Google, the first news headline made my heart stop. That outfit, the man I saw last night and the one following me, it's him. My whole body went cold. Then, I heard the sound of someone entering the door code. The red shoes started dragging me toward the killer again. I had completely lost control of my legs. with all the hatred and determination I felt from the shoes. There was only one explanation. These shoes belonged to Isabel. And somehow, her soul had entered them, and she was trying to get revenge.
Karen, I know you're in there. Open the door.
No, please, don't hurt me. I don't know anything. If Isabel wants revenge, what does that have to do with me? I don't want to be silenced by that killer. I want to live. I completely gave up on using my legs. I dragged myself across the floor with my hands, fighting against the pull of the shoes. My hands hurt so much they went numb, but I couldn't stop. The killer was getting closer. I crawled to the mirror, pulled it down, and smashed it. I grabbed a shard of glass still stuck to a piece of wood. The shoes were still squeezing my feet, like they were trying to eat me alive. I had no choice. I had to tear these shoes off my body no matter what. The door burst open, and the red shoes, with my feet still inside, flew straight at the killer like a bullet. But Joe walked into the room without flinching. I saw him raise the axe, and the shoes, along with my bloody feet, were chopped into 4 pieces. I heard Isabel's voice, screaming in rage. I crawled backward, reaching out in despair. But Joe just walked toward me, dragging the axe across the floor. Screech! 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 I cried. I begged. I screamed for someone to save me. But no one came.
Helen, that's enough. How long are you going to keep up this boring joke?
Knock, knock, knock.
Helen, the woman I'd loved and lived with for 3 years, looked like a stranger. Her face was empty, her eyes hollow, like a lifeless mask. What do you want? My voice cracked, a mix of anger and fear. Helen didn't answer. She just stared at me and spoke.
Knock, knock, knock.
Those 3 words, repeated in a cold, steady rhythm, sent chills down my spine. I couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing my pillow and blanket, I left the suffocating room. This was the 4th night in a row she'd woken me up at exactly 3:27 a.m. I texted an old friend from college, now a psychologist, explaining the strange things happening to Helen. His reply shocked me. Had something really happened to Helen? I decided to tell him everything, holding nothing back. Everything began 4 days ago. We were sleeping together as usual when Helen shook me awake. At exactly 3:27 a.m., she started this strange knock, knock, knock game. I thought she'd just woken up from a bad dream and wanted me to comfort her. So, half asleep, I played along. Who's there? Is it my beloved Helen?
It's not me, so don't open the door.
After her cryptic reply, Helen fell asleep as if nothing happened. The next morning she seemed normal, but at 3:27 a.m., she woke up and repeated it all. The response from my friend left me stunned. I tried to justify it, but his reply was firm, almost certain. I couldn't deny it anymore. In that moment, my trust in Helen began to waver. I shut my laptop and tried to get some rest, but those doubts had already taken root, digging deeper into my mind. In the end, curiosity and doubt won. Helen's sudden appearance unsettled me, but her blank expression only fueled my irritation. I actually set up a hidden camera in the house to spy on my girlfriend. Helen and I were in a cold war. She didn't bother to explain or apologize. That night I couldn't sleep. My nerves were on edge, my heartbeat slowing, steadying, sinking with each tick of the clock. I could almost predict the exact moment it would hit 3:27 a.m. And then, as if caught in an endless, suffocating loop, it all happened again. My patience with Helen had reached its limit. This time, I decided to act. I was going to make her stop. I I tied Helen to the bed, gagging her with a strip of cloth. I wanted to see if, without my response, without being able to continue her game, she could just shut up and sleep like a normal person. The house was eerily quiet, except for the steady ticking of the clock. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to review the footage from my hidden camera. What I saw made my blood run cold. The Helen in the recordings was unrecognizable. She looked like Helen, but her movements were robotic, stiff, lifeless, like a puppet with its strings being pulled. I had to admit it. Helen was no longer Helen. Or worse, she might not even be human anymore. Suddenly, 3 heavy knocks shattered the silence. Knock, knock, knock. Then a voice, unmistakably hers, called out from behind the door.
Eddie, it's me, Helen.
Her voice was so real. Too real. I checked the front door camera, needing to confirm if it was really her. And there she was. Helen, the real Helen, crying and begging for me to let her in.
Eddie, please, let me in. That thing in there. It's the imposter.
My whole body trembled. If she was outside, then what was lying in my bed? I turned around and froze. Helen, or rather the thing pretending to be her, was standing just a few steps away, staring at me with empty eyes. I forced myself to stay calm. My friend had sent me some tools to prepare for this. Among them was a high-frequency audio file, which I quickly played. It worked. I had identified my enemy as an alternate, so a powerful UV flashlight would be useful. The alternate was trying to stop me from opening the door, and it could no longer maintain Helen's form. It appeared before me with a grotesque, twisted body. As the light from the flashlight hit it, its body distorted, its features melting into a blurry mass. It was no longer Helen. It had turned into a flickering white shadow. I remembered what my friend had told me. Between 3 and 4 a.m., the boundary between worlds is thinnest. I had to bring the real Helen back before it was too late. The door swung open as if revealing another dimension. Blinding light and a cacophony of chaotic sounds rushed at me, overwhelming my senses and leaving me dizzy. I held my breath, anxiously staring at the door, waiting for what would come next. Finally, I let out a sigh of relief. My Helen was back.
Eddie!
Helen, I missed you so much.
I miss you too.
My eyes were glued to the screen. The scene made me jump and scream, instinctively leaning back.
Ian!
I looked up, straight into my teacher's furious eyes. My classmates snickered. I flipped my phone face down on the desk, shrugging with a grin. "It's just a movie, sir." That only made him angrier. He started yelling, but I didn't bother listening. I just stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked out of class. I never liked sitting in class. Boring lectures, the teacher's monotone voice. It all made me want to fall asleep. Today was no different. I pulled out my phone, scrolling for something more interesting, maybe a game to kill time. My fingers tapped on the screen, focused, then cold. A drop of water landed on my forehead. I frowned, wiped it away, and looked up. Patches of mold spread across the walls and water dripped down slowly. This really is a rundown school. The damp, musty smell in the air is strong enough to make my nose sting. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence or if the school's water pipes have actually been affected by the construction site next door. But ever since they started digging up the pipes, my school has gotten more and more damp. The walls, ceiling, and even the floor are all wet, with some spots even dripping water.
I wonder when the school is finally going to fix the water pipes.
Yeah, the bathroom is basically turning moss green. Who knows how many centipedes or cockroaches are in there? That's terrifying.
And every time someone walks on the wet floor in slippers, the annoying squelching sound echoes throughout the hallway. This learning environment is seriously frustrating. There are just too many distractions. Maybe I should go to the bathroom to get some peace and quiet. I walked into the bathroom. As expected, During class hours, it was completely empty. Even though the place was damp and moldy and the toilet was so filthy that I had to squat on top of it, I could still endure it for the sake of some peace and quiet. I pulled out my phone and continued the game I had left unfinished. Just as I was getting annoyed at the greedy game developer for shoving the 8th ad into my game, a familiar voice made me freeze.
Yes, I'm talking about Ian, your student. He was watching movies in my class again today.
Ugh, that annoying teacher again. I had already hidden in the bathroom, yet I still couldn't escape his rude scolding. I tried to ignore his voice and focused on my game. A moment later, the words, "Game over," flashed on the screen. Frustrated, I cursed under my breath. Running into that teacher was just bad luck, but then I suddenly realized I couldn't hear his voice anymore. Instead, a soft moaning sound came from the stall next to me. The thin partition between the two stalls trembled slightly in rhythm with the sound. I smirked. What the hell was that disgusting old man doing over there? I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera, and slipped it through the gap between the stalls to record some evidence. But suddenly, the lights in the bathroom flickered. I looked around in confusion, but a moment later, the lights flickered back on. But as soon as I looked at the screen, I froze. It wasn't what I expected. My teacher was sitting on the bathroom floor, his whole body turning purple. A huge snake was slithering into his mouth. His eyes were rolled back, and dark blood was oozing from snake bites on his neck. I screamed, dropping my phone. The bathroom lights flickered on and off. My breath was shaky as I bent down to pick up my phone. Then I heard a strange noise from the toilet. My heart pounded. I quickly flushed the toilet, hoping it was just my imagination. But it wasn't. The toilet lid started shaking. Thick, black water spilled over the edge, filling the air with a horrible stench. I covered my mouth, trying not to gag. The lid shook even harder. Panicked, I grabbed the door handle, but it was stuck. No way. I yanked it, pounded on the door, but then, bam! The toilet lid flew open. A soaking wet rat jumped out, but right behind it, 3 or 4 snakes lunged, their red mouths wide open, snapping at the helpless rat. I screamed and kicked the door as hard as I could. Boom. The toilet exploded. Filthy water, trash, dead rats, and writhing snakes flew everywhere. I was thrown against the door, my body covered in grime. I gagged, almost too weak to move. But the disgusting creatures kept coming. More and more snakes slithered out of the toilet, coiling around me. Their red mouths opened wide, and then they struck. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the deep, blood-red darkness closing in on me.
I'm a microbiologist. My specialty? Fungal and viral mutations. If it's gross, dangerous, or involves things sprouting out of places they shouldn't, I'm your guy. It's a dream job. If your dreams include endless pressure, angry bosses, and occasionally dodging test subjects that want to eat your face. Most days, I wanted to curl into a ball and scream, but instead I trudged on, wearing my lab coat like a cape of martyrdom. Then one day, I thought, what if I didn't have to? The idea hit me like a runaway pipette. What if I turned myself into one of those creatures? Temporarily, of course. I'd be too sick to work, collect my occupational hazard insurance, and finally relax. Bonus, nobody could yell at a guy with mutant claws. Thus began the project. I concocted a gas designed to mutate human bodies for 3 days. The fungal compound would dissolve and reconfigure tissue, creating temporary, horrifying mutations before self-destructing. Side effects included mild swelling and a rash, basically the flu with an extra dose of nightmare fuel. Perfect for taking a break without worrying about anyone dying. Step 1. test it on myself, because that's always the best idea, right? I dipped my finger into the glass jar containing the gas. At first, nothing happened. Then, everything happened. The skin on my finger turned black, sprouting tiny fungal threads that twisted and curled like they had a vendetta. My veins popped like black lightning bolts, and my hand ballooned into a grotesque claw. The pain was intense. But an hour later, it was over. My hand was back to normal, save for some itchy redness. I even high-fived myself with my non-mutated hand for pulling it off. The plan was working. By lunchtime, everything was ready. I figured I'd reward myself with a nice last meal before my vacation. A bowl of pho never tasted so good. When I got back, though, something was wrong. The capsule was locked. Inside was Min, my overly curious colleague, slumped over like he'd just taken a really bad nap. My stomach dropped faster than my high school GPA. The idiot must have activated the gas while snooping around. Min! I shouted, banging on the glass. No response. And then he moved. His body spasmed as fungal veins crept across his skin. His limbs contorted, his jaw unhinged, and his head grew. A massive, mushroom-like structure burst from his skull, spraying spores across the pod. Min, buddy, you okay? He roared. The pod door hissed open and Min stepped out, or what was left of him. His claws scraped the floor as he lumbered forward, a terrifying mix of rage and confusion. Okay, let's not do anything rash, I stammered, backing away. He didn't listen. One swipe of his oversized arm sent my lab bench flying. I dodged and bolted for the control panel, slamming the emergency lockdown button. The lab door sealed shut with a satisfying clang. No way was I letting the boss find out. If this got out, I'd be buried in work, overtime, and pay cuts. This mess was mine to fix. Unfortunately, Min wasn't a fan of locked doors. He pounded on the reinforced glass, cracks spiderwebbing with each hit. I needed a plan. Fast. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, I crept toward him. The second he broke through, I let loose a blizzard of foam, momentarily blinding him. He howled, swiping wildly, but I managed to activate the decontamination system. Gas filled the room, designed to neutralize pathogens and hopefully raging mushroom men. For a moment, it worked. Min staggered, coughing and wheezing. I started to breathe again. But then he adapted, because of course he did. Great. Desperation hit. My eyes darted to the capsule, the one thing that could even the odds. If I mutated myself, I might stand a chance. I sprinted for it, sliding into the pod like an action hero. But when I hit the activation button, nothing happened. Sparks flew from the control panel. Min's earlier rampage had severed the power supply. Of course! Why not? I slumped in the pod, exhausted. Min stalked closer, his heavy breaths filling the room. I closed my eyes, ready to accept my fate. But then, salvation arrived. The lab door burst open, and a team of security guards stormed in. They shot Min with tranquilizer darts and hit him with electrified nets. He thrashed and roared. But eventually, the beast went down. As the guards dragged Min away, my boss showed up, hitting me with their signature line.
Care to explain what the hell just happened here?
I gave a weak thumbs up. Science experiment? You'd think my problems ended there, but no. First, I was stuck writing a mountain of incident reports. Then, I was ordered to develop a cure for Min while taking over his workload. After a week of sleepless nights and more caffeine than any human should consume, I finally cracked it. Min was cured, though he wasn't thrilled about the whole mutant mushroom thing. Fair. As for me, I learned an important lesson. Sometimes taking a break is better than accidentally turning your coworker into a murder machine. But hey, at least I didn't have to dodge test subjects this week. Small victories.
That morning, I was feeding the horses, as I always did. Then, from the village center, a noise broke through the quiet, shouting, sharp and urgent, laced with tension I could feel in my bones. I dropped the feed basket and ran. What I saw at the sacred stone took the breath from my lungs. A man, clearly not from any tribe I knew, knelt in the dirt with his wrists bound tightly and dried blood marking the side of his face, while my people surrounded him like wolves torn between fear and the instinct to strike. My father, the chief, had already made his judgment. The stranger was a harbinger of misfortune, and he would be sacrificed to calm the spirits. But when his eyes met mine, something in me shifted. There was no anger in them, no pride or hate, only fear, bare, and deeply human, the kind that speaks beyond words. In that silent moment, I saw a plea I couldn't ignore. So I turned to my father, approached him quietly and whispered, asking him to spare the man's life. My father considered me for a long moment, then turned back to the man.
Because my daughter is merciful, your life will be spared. Remember this gift.
I approached the man and untied his ropes, my hands trembling slightly as I did so. I didn't know then that this simple act of kindness would become the thread that unraveled everything I believed to be safe. His name was Edmund. In the days that followed, I visited him in secret. He was weakened by injury and hunger, so I brought him food, healing herbs, and simply sat with him when he needed nothing but quiet company. Slowly, as trust began to form, he told me about his world, a place beyond the sea, where cities glowed through the night and people lived not under the rule of spirits or chiefs, but free, each person carving their own path. He placed a small, time-worn compass into my hand, saying it had always pointed him toward hope. Then, with a tenderness that caught me off guard, he looked at me and called me his wild queen. It was a name that unsettled and intrigued me all at once. And when he asked me to leave with him, to cross the ocean and see that world for myself, I felt a sudden thrill rise within me. The old, buried longing for something more than duty and tradition. Even so, I turned him down. My heart wasn't ready to part with the only home I had ever known. That changed the day my father announced my marriage to Nakoma, an elder from an allied tribe. I had never met him. I was told he was strong, wise, and a valuable alliance for peace. But none of that mattered to the part of me that wanted to be seen. Not as a daughter or a bride, but as myself. I didn't want a life chosen for me, wrapped in expectation and silence. So I went to Edmund, and for the first time I said yes. We left in the dark, with only the compass and the sound of waves for company. As the shoreline faded, I told myself I wasn't running. I was choosing. I believed that somewhere out there, beyond the sea, freedom was waiting. At first, everything dazzled me. England was louder, faster, stranger than I'd ever imagined. There were buildings that reached into the clouds, voices that echoed in alleys, and colors I couldn't name. But the stairs came quickly, and they stayed. People looked at me with the cold curiosity of collectors studying something exotic, as if I were a creature brought back from the edge of the world to be gawked at and explained away. Only Edmund treated me like I belonged, at least, in the beginning. But slowly, the lines began to blur. He insisted I stay indoors, told me the city was cruel, that the people wouldn't understand me. He said he was protecting me, and I wanted to believe him, even as the walls began to close in, even as my reflection grew unfamiliar. When I finally told him I wanted to return home, my voice was shaking, but firm. He simply smiled and said we would have one last dinner, something special, a farewell. I remember how warm the room felt, how sweet the wine was, how his eyes never left mine as he raised his glass and whispered,
To us.
After that, darkness took everything. I awoke to darkness, not the kind that comes with night, but the kind that sinks into your bones. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even feel the rhythm of breath in my chest. But I was still present. I could see. Edmund was standing beside me, humming quietly as he brushed my hair, painted my lips, and stitched my eyelids shut with careful, practiced hands. He whispered as he worked, calling me beautiful, calling me his forever. He treated my body like something sacred, and still something no longer mine.
I was always the punchline to their jokes, the lumbering target of their sharp tongues and cruel laughter. Today was no different. We were at Splash Out, the water park renowned for its towering slides and twisting tunnels. The sun blazed overhead and laughter rippled through the air. But not mine. For me, this place was just another stage for humiliation. The gang, my so-called friends, clustered around me near the entrance of the Turbo Twist. It was a short, narrow slide nestled among the towering giants of the park, but its reputation was deceptive. It was tighter than it looked, almost claustrophobic.
Bet you wouldn't fit.
Matt sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. The others erupted in laughter. My stomach churned as I climbed the steps to the slide. The rough concrete bit into my bare feet, each step amplifying the knot in my chest. At the top, the lifeguard gave me a dubious look but said nothing as I positioned myself on the slick edge. I hesitated, my gaze darting to the entrance of the slide. The opening looked uncomfortably snug, a glossy black moor glistening with running water. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for my inevitable retreat. Heat flushed my face, not from the sun, but from the shame simmering under their scrutiny. Fine, I'll do it. Their laughter turned into whoops of mock encouragement. The cool touch of the water against my legs sent a shiver up my spine. I pushed off, the initial rush of momentum making my heart leap. For a moment, it was exhilarating. The darkness of the tube enveloped me, water splashing against my sides. But then I felt it, the slide narrowing around me. My shoulders scraped against the slick walls, the friction slowing me down. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized I was stuck. I tried to wiggle, to shift my weight forward, but the slide gripped me like a vice. The flow of water, relentless and uncaring, pooled around me, rising quickly. The water was up to my chin now, surging against my face. I craned my neck, desperate to keep my mouth and nose above the rising tide. My breaths came in shallow gasps, the air in the tube thick and humid. I thrashed, trying to free myself, but the effort was futile. My skin scraped against the abrasive surface, and I felt a burning sting on my arms and sides. With each attempt to move, the pain intensified. The water pressed against my body, forcing me tighter into the unforgiving tube.
He's stuck! Get help!
Inside the tube, my reality was collapsing. The rising water sloshed against my face, and my vision blurred with tears and panic. I could feel the skin on my arms and back peeling away, raw and exposed from the constant friction. Blood mixed with the water, its metallic scent filling the confined space. Suddenly, I felt a violent tug on my legs. Someone was trying to pull me free. The force sent sharp jolts of pain up my spine. My skin stretched, tearing in places as my body resisted the pull. Another impact reverberated through the tube. Someone outside was hitting it, trying to crack it open. Stop! I wanted to scream, but the words were drowned out as water flooded my mouth. I choked, my chest convulsing as I fought for air. The pulling intensified, and with a sickening lurch, I felt myself being wrenched free. The rush of air and blinding sunlight hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed onto the wet pavement, my body trembling uncontrollably. For a moment, I was overwhelmed by the sheer relief of breathing again, but then the pain hit me in full force. Gasps and cries erupted around me. I looked down at my arms, at my chest, and my breath caught in my throat. My skin was gone in long, jagged strips, leaving raw, red flesh exposed to the air. Fat and tissue gleamed wetly under the sunlight, grotesque and shimmering. Blood oozed from the wounds, pooling around me. My friends stood frozen, their faces pale and eyes wide with horror. The lifeguards hovered nearby, their faces grim. One of them barked into a walkie-talkie, calling for medical assistance. As I stood up, pain radiating through every nerve in my body, I could see the fat under my skin quivering with every shuddering breath I took. Strings of it dangled from my arms, grotesque and alien. People gathered at a distance, their horrified whispers carrying through the air. The world around me blurred, the colors bleeding together in a surreal haze. Before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was the reflection of my mangled body in a puddle of water, a sight so horrifying it burned into my mind. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, my body swaddled in layers of gauze. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air. I couldn't move without sharp, searing pain shooting through me. My parents sat beside me, their faces etched with worry and guilt. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. The word felt like a cruel joke. My body was a patchwork of scars, a grotesque reminder of what had happened. They say trauma changes you, and they're right. I don't leave the house much anymore. The world outside feels too sharp, too cruel. The whispers, the stares, I can't bear them, but after all, maybe it doesn't matter. In the end, the scars speak louder than words ever could.